here in Essex County, Virginia. And I'm joined by several of my cohort agents this morning: Stephanie Romelchek from Westmoreland County, Trent Jones in Northumberland, Lancaster County, Laura Maxey-Nay from Hanover County, and Mike Broadus from Caroline and King George County. If there's some other agents on the call this morning, we appreciate y'all joining us in this effort. This is a third session that we've had for VCE Ag today, and we hope that this is a benefit to our clientele, to our producers, and also within the organization here in Virginia Cooperative Extension to share these updates and make the best use of the time that we have during the current situation. Just a few ground rules this morning. We've got two speakers, I think, that are going to be sharing some topics with us. We just ask everyone, when you've entered the meeting, I believe everybody has been put on mute. So we're going to leave it that way while the speakers are presenting. And then at the end of the presentation, we'll take some questions for our speakers, and we'll unmute everybody at the end. If you have a question and you just want to jot it down or put it in the chat box, if you put those in the chat box during the presentation, we'll go back and scroll through all of those questions to make sure that we cover everybody and get all your questions answered as best as possible. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and introduce our first speaker this morning. We're pleased to be joined by John Bove, who is an assistant professor of agricultural economics at Virginia Tech. So John, we appreciate you joining us this morning. And I think John's going to be talking a little bit about the COVID-19 situation and the CARES Act and some details associated with that, and maybe answer some of your questions for the financial side of your production operations or agricultural, natural resource operations, whatever you may be joining us for this morning. So with that, John, we appreciate you joining us, and you go ahead. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Robbie. So title on the slides I have here is COVID-19 and the CARES Act, but really I'm going to be focusing on the CARES Act and some of the issues associated with the outbreak as they relate to agriculture. Just as a disclaimer, this presentation certainly doesn't constitute legal or medical advice. I'm an economist, and I do my best to understand policy and talk about policy implications and the economics of all that's happening, but it's certainly not legal advice. So here's a little outline. We're going to be talking about, what the situation is in Virginia, the CARES Act, and then COVID-19 and farm labor, and a couple of other related issues. So as we all know, this is a global pandemic, and the numbers are changing rapidly every day. Thousands of people are dying in the United States every day. I just wanted to remind everybody that in Virginia, as of two and a half weeks ago now, Governor Northam issued a stay-at-home executive order. We're supposed to stay in the house for the most part, but we may leave for many reasons, including buying foods, seeking medical attention, taking care of other people, visiting family members, facilitating childcare. We are allowed to engage in outdoor activity, including exercise, if we maintain a distance of 6 feet from others. We may travel to and from our residence, our work, and we have banned gatherings of more than 10 people. Of course, these are all rules on the books, but there's probably very little enforcement of any of this. But I bring it all up as a reminder of how we should be maintaining distance from each other, that we should be limiting our activities outside the home. Agriculture is considered an essential industry, and as far as I know, no state in the country has shut down farming operations as places of employment. But other than work, we really shouldn't be doing much outside the house. So the CARES Act, the stimulus package that was passed a few weeks ago, is what I'd like to spend most of my time talking about this morning. So this was a $2 trillion package that was passed and signed the last week of March. They set aside within this $23.5 billion for farmers. $14 billion of that $23.5 billion is going to be used to re-up the account of the Commodity Credit Corporation. This corporation will use those funds to make payments to farmers hurt by COVID-19 using similar sort of method as the same Commodity Credit Corporation used to help farmers who were hurt by the trade war over the last 2 years. In addition to that $14 billion, there's another $9.5 billion, which is given to the Secretary of Agriculture's office that is supposed to be used specifically to support producers of livestock, dairy, and specialty crops, and also producers who support local food systems. And I understand, based on a news article from Chris Clayton, that industry groups have put in requests for a certain number of billions of dollars of this money, of this $23.5 billion. And it will be up to some economists and other decision makers within the USDA Secretary's office to disperse that money. I also wanted to highlight a couple of other like rural focused and farming focused elements of this massive piece of legislation. They are putting in another $100 million for rural broadband. And there's a small tax incentive for farmers who donate commodities to charity. Of course, in addition to those USDA specific programs, farmers and farm workers are going to benefit from the checks or direct deposits that everybody should be receiving within a couple of weeks. If you make less than $75,000 as an individual or less than $150,000 as a married couple, you'll get $1,200 per adult and another $500 per child. And as your income rises up to $99,000 per person, this benefit is phased out. This has been in the news a lot over the last few weeks, and I'm sure you've read about it. But one thing I want to make sure to emphasize is that this is based on the most recent tax return that you've filed. So if you filed your 2019 tax return, the payment will be based on your income in 2019. If you haven't filed your 2019 tax return, you may want to think about whether your income or number of children makes it more advantageous to have these payments based on your 2018 or your 2019 income. So if you haven't filed your 2019 tax return yet, it will be based on your 2018 tax return. And it's not about which one is more well, once you filed the 2019 tax return, there's nothing you can do about it. The payment will be based on your 2019 tax return. And the other big component of the stimulus package that's been making a lot of headlines is the Paycheck Protection Program. This is administered through the Small Business Administration. It's really important to know that loans will be forgiven entirely if all employees are kept on the payroll for 8 weeks, and if the money is used to cover payroll, rent, mortgage interest, or utilities. Theoretically, it's available through June 30th, 2020, but I just heard on the news a day or two ago that the SBA is likely to run out of the money that's allocated to this program by today or tomorrow. So if you're a farmer and you've been thinking about the Paycheck Protection Program, you've got to submit your loan paperwork today to have a chance of getting it. This is a loan program that's broadly available to small businesses, those with fewer than 500 employees, whose principal place of residence is in the United States. So it does not, so if you have migrant laborers, they do not count towards that 500 employee limit. I'm sorry, I should have updated that slide, but I didn't. I don't know what happened there. This was from my presentation 2 weeks ago. Lenders were to begin processing the paperwork on April 3rd. And the other thing is, if you, so most employers should expect to get their loan forgiven entirely. If you don't get it forgiven, then the maturity will be 2 years and it'll have an interest rate of 0.5%. So the loan amount is calculated as your average monthly payroll in 2019 times 2.5. In other words, 2.5 months worth of payroll expenses. There are a couple of adjustments to this basic formula. One is that each employee's salary has to be capped at $100,000 per year. The other is that migrant laborers, H-2A and H-2B workers' pay does not count towards payroll for the purpose of calculating this loan amount. And then the legislation says that loan forgiveness will be provided for the sum of payroll costs, mortgage interest payments, rent payments, and utilities. At least 75% of the loan amount should be spent on payroll costs. Each business may only take out one loan. And I've provided a link here from to a website from the by the SBA that provides more information. Sole proprietorships are eligible for the Paycheck Protection Program if you provide documentation, including documentation that the business was operating as of February 15th, and some payroll information. You must include the 1040 Schedule C. Some of the forms, there may be some flexibility, but also it's worth noting that you have to provide payroll information, and not all farms may be able to provide that. You can go to the USDA's coronavirus website, usda.gov/coronavirus, to see more information about how this documentation may apply to you or not. I just want to talk for a minute about this other SBA loan program. It's called the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. So farms are ineligible for this except for cooperatives, agricultural enterprises, and nurseries. And so for that reason, I don't want to spend any more time talking about EIDL, but the slide is here, the link is here, and so if you go back and view the recording later, you can get more information about it. There are some additional components that apply to small businesses in general, not just farms. If you don't take out an SBA loan, you may receive a tax credit for keeping employees on payrolls. This tax credit will be 50% of employees' wages up to a certain limit, but you have to document a 50% reduction in receipts relative to the same quarter the previous year. I'm seeing a couple of chat messages. Oh, thank you, Stephanie, for sending those links. Thanks so much. In addition to all these new loan programs, the SBA is going to be paying principal, interest, and fees on certain existing loans that have been issued by SBA, or the 7A loans and 504 loans, and also microloans. This principal, interest, and fees will be paid for 6 months on existing loans, and it will be paid on new loans through September 27th. Final little carrot they're giving to small businesses is that self-employed individuals and employees may defer the 6.2% payroll tax and pay it over 2021 and 22. So just a couple more issues I wanted to discuss besides what is in the legislation that was issued a few weeks ago. Farm labor, a lot of farmers have been concerned that guest workers may not be able to cross the Mexican border during the pandemic. But the Department of Homeland Security has stated very clearly that agricultural guest workers are considered essential, and they are going to be allowed to cross the border despite whatever other restrictions may be in place. They've also agreed to waive in-person interviews for H-2A visas, and they've kept the U.S. consulate in Mexico open. So there may be some issues still with getting laborers, but in terms of like the policy that's on the books, guest workers are certainly supposed to be able to get their visas renewed and cross the border. Another couple of issues that I wanted to raise this morning because they've come up in conversations this week. What's happening with cattle markets? Just in the last couple of weeks, there have been a lot of meat plant closures due to outbreaks of coronavirus among workers in meat plants. Capacity is down something like 25% in cattle and pork slaughterhouses. And so what does that mean for farmers? It means that buyers are not buying as many head of cattle. It means that prices are going down. Prices received by farmers are going down. And at the same time, there isn't as much meat reaching consumers. So there's this perception that meat is relatively scarce, and grocery stores are running out of meat on the shelves. And so retail prices are going up to some extent, and farm prices are going down. And that certainly, I think, has the tendency to create a sense of panic among both producers and consumers. We had a conversation a couple of days ago, and a couple of agents were talking about how it's, the way that the market is going, the way that prices are looking, it's just going to become more and more expensive to keep feeding cattle that are ready to market. And the prices certainly don't seem to, they're not going to recover very soon because of the way the meat plants are closing. So it may be a good idea to go ahead and market your cattle, just given that it's going to be more and more expensive to keep feeding them. Okay, so this slide just summarizes what I said over the last minute. Prices paid to farmers is going to decrease. Farmers may have to find other buyers farther away, and prices of feed grains should probably also decrease because the prices that farmers are receiving for the fed cattle are not too high. Last, because I know that there may be some folks on the call who are interested in vegetables, I've heard that a lot of growers are having trouble finding buyers because their restaurant markets are drying up. And so, that's an issue, and growers are going to have to make individual decisions if they're able to make decisions about planting still or harvesting. They may have to decide not to plant or not to harvest, or to find other buyers. And I just wanted to highlight that farmers markets may be an option that some growers are considering, but they may not be the best option because the state has put in place restrictions on farmers markets. VDAX is now requiring that all farmers markets operate as drive-throughs or use online pre-ordering systems. So some of the markets are not open, and some of them have these restrictions in place that may make it even harder to access those markets. So those are all the slides I have for this morning. Thank you all so much for listening, and I'd be happy to take any questions, I guess, after the next speaker. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, John. We appreciate all that great information and you taking the time to join us this morning.
Absolutely.
I guess we'll go ahead, John. I don't know if Ken's on the call. I don't know if you can hear me, Ken. We've got Ken Upshaw, I think, or hope to have Ken Upshaw from USDA Farm Service Agency on the call with us this morning. And he's just here. He doesn't have a formal presentation, but if anybody has any specific questions for Ken from USDA or the Farm Service Agency, he's going to hope to be able to answer some of those questions. But at this time, I guess we'll go ahead and open it up for any questions for John in his presentation on the CARES Act and the impacts on markets and those type of things from COVID-19. So I think just a quick note for those of you that are joining us via laptop or computer, if you look in the chat box during the presentation, Stephanie did share a couple of those links to the USDA coronavirus website, as well as the Small Business Administration disaster assistance website. So some of those comments that John made, you can find that information, more of that information at those links, excuse me. So I guess we'll go ahead and I'm just going to unmute everybody. If you've got a lot of background noise where you are, if you wouldn't mind, remuting yourself or something if you don't have a question, but we'll go ahead and try this. And if you have questions, we'll open it up for questions now to John. So, all right, everybody's been unmuted. Does anybody have any further questions for John? We encourage y'all to ask questions. This is your opportunity to get your questions answered.
Robbie, this is CJ McDonald under the Stars Farm. How are you this morning?
Hey, CJ, how you doing?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks for inviting me to this. So my biggest question for John is applicable to, I think, all small farms that maybe don't process payroll, like a standard company, and for those that are newer, right? So as you know from our conversation the other day, our farm did not qualify pretty much across the board for any of the assistance, which in some cases has put our farm in an all stop, right? So we've been hearing rumors that there's going to be some other type of small business potential capital assistance that is designed to help get keep farms going and whatnot. And then I've also heard that USDA is getting some specific money that will be utilized for more working capital that is, again, designed to be in the CARES Act. So, credit checks are less and the qualifications are less and whatnot. John, have you heard anything like that, or is this all just hearsay and rumor?
Those are great questions. As far as what's in the CARES Act, I mean, I have not seen anything specific to USDA being able to provide more capital to farms. I know that the Small Business Administration PPP loan was, there was supposed to be some, really quick cash flow coming from that. But as I said during my presentation, that money is probably going to be all spent by tomorrow. So I don't know about, those possible programs that you just referred to. It's based on my reading, it's not in the CARES Act. I'd love to see more about it, for sure. Do you have any links, or is this just all based on conversations?
Yeah, the sustainable, I do have one link and I'm going to go look for it right now.
Okay.
So I will, I'll send it off to Robbie. I think I've got two links that I sent over to another member, a member of the FSA, basically saying, I think it's ATRR's Sustainable Agriculture blog. I don't know.
Okay.
Again, I'll have to go back and look where it even details out agricultural provisions S.4398 or something like that. So maybe a place to reference back to. I know that rural development is noted in this blog that says that they're going to be given additional income. It goes through almost each of the sections or sectors or divisions of USDA. So I'll find that and send that to you, John.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.
CJ, this is Ken Upshaw with the Farm Service Agency here in Hanover, Carolina.
Yeah.
Have you contacted your local farm loan program
Brandon.
office?
Yeah, Brandon
Yeah.
Waldron. Yeah, great
Okay.
guy. Really appreciated all the information and the kind of the back and forth. I sent him some information. He sent me some information. So I really appreciated that. Unfortunately, based on what I'm hearing from him, FSA is still going, right? They're still moving forward and doing their loans, but they take 3 to 4 months. Our farm will be out of business before then. And I'm exaggerating, of course. That was a little, God Almighty. It won't be out of business, but that's the feel, right? The sense of urgency. And so, again, Brandon's awesome. His team, everybody that I've ever talked to over there, they're great, but they're honest, right? Which is what we want. They're upfront. They're frank. Yeah, CJ, these take 3 to 4 months to go through the process. And so, for us, for our crops, not that I'm not going to fill it out. It's just and go the standard loan route through FSA. The challenge is that the time it would take me to fill out that really big application, I've got to spend it elsewhere looking for funds because we're getting ready to get into our big season, and with the COVID shutdown, it's already tough. So we're coming up with creative and different ways and different ideas to keep our specialty crop getting into the public. I have to manage my time. There's only so many hours in a day, and unfortunately, filling out the FSA that's going to take 3 to 4 months. That's just not it. I mean, getting money is priority, but it can't be a priority that way. Does that make sense?
Right. Well, typically, anytime a bill is passed and funds are earmarked for a particular program, it could take months before it trickles down to the county level, and then their process begins with applications and having applicants fill them out. So I do understand, yes.
So, Robbie, I just found both of those links. I'll get them over to you right now so that you can send them to everybody.
All right, thanks, CJ. I'll do my best to distribute those or post those when we post a recording of the presentation this morning as supplemental information. Are there any other questions this morning for either John or Ken related to the COVID-19 and CARES Act and funding and all of those things? Any questions?
Robbie, I had a question for John.
Yes, sir, Mike.
Actually, it's John. It's a statement. You touched on the farmers market this morning.
Yeah.
8:45, about the same time you signed on, we all got a message in extension. We all got a email from Teresa Nartea.
Mm-hmm.
She has just found out as of this morning, maybe, that farmers markets have been reopened.
Okay.
But with strict guidelines.
Okay.
So they in fact have been reopened. I've got a note from her and also got a note, an attachment from Virginia Farmers Market Association discussing the new guidelines. So they are able to reopen now.
Great. Thank you, Robbie. Yeah, I see that, Mike. I see that email in my inbox now.
Sure.
So, yeah, thanks for the update.
I wasn't sure if you had gotten that or not.
Yeah, I did get it, but just didn't catch it before the presentation. Thanks.
Robbie, this is Ken again. I'd like to mention a few things about the Farm Service Agency. We have time?
Yes, sir, Ken. Yes, sir. Anything you can share?
Well, on behalf of all the county offices, our doors are open. Well, our office is open. We're working. However, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the doors are locked and we are not allowed to let any customers inside the office. However, we're making arrangements to meet with producers because this is crop reporting time. We're starting to get into reporting of planted corn as of this point. But farmers can call us or email us. We can meet them in the lobby at most offices or in the parking lot to exchange information so we can enter the acreages and keep the ball rolling as far as with the programs and crop insurance and so forth. So we are making arrangements to meet with farmers, not inside the office, but we can meet in the lobby and the parking lot. Any producers that need maps to assist them with reporting their acreage, we have them available. As requested, we will mail them out, possibly in some instances deliver them if we're in the area. But we have many programs going on right now other than just crop reporting, but we have the WHIP program, which I don't think many farmers in the area are aware of this, but any issues with the hurricane or excessive moisture or floods during the 2018 and 2019 crop year, we have a WHIP program which will, I guess, pick up some of the losses they incurred that crop insurance did not pick up, and possibly they did not have in crop insurance as a section for them also. And this is on all crops, including produce and row crops. I just want to mention that there's no deadline on this program as of yet, but it could be announced anytime. So I know farmers are busy in the field, but this is something they need to take a look at to recoup some of their losses from the 2018 and 2019 crop year. And 2019 specifically is probably prevented planted wheat in the fall of 2018. We really didn't have that many excessive moisture issues in 19. We did have a dry spell in August and September, but none of the counties in this area were designated as a D3 county, which means if you had no rainfall precipitation within a continuous 10-week period. I think for the most part it was a 5-week period for this area. So just want to mention that.
Thanks, Ken. We appreciate you sharing that with us. Is there any way you could get some of that information to myself and Laura and Stephanie and Trent and Mike, and we can try to help disseminate that WHIP information out to producers so at least they're aware of that opportunity?
Yes, sir. I will forward you a copy of the monthly news bulletin that we put out, and which covers a variety of programs that are going on at the time. No problem.
Thanks, Ken. That'd be greatly appreciated. Any other questions this morning for John or Ken related to the COVID-19 and CARES Act, USDA, FSA programs? Any other questions?
Robbie, I have one more for the cattle. Places where they bring cattle in to sell, shutting down the cattle markets.
Yeah.
What is the reason for that? I was talking with one of my large farmers yesterday who runs a lot of fat cattle, and he just couldn't understand it. I could not explain why. I told him, I said, maybe these slaughterhouses have got to close down because of close contact. I couldn't answer it. Can you answer?
Okay, sure. Yeah, that's a great question, Mike. The slaughterhouses, I shouldn't say a lot, about a quarter of slaughterhouses for pork and cattle in the Midwest have shut down because of outbreaks of coronavirus among their workers. So it's not really a preventative measure. It's more of a necessity. That this illness is present at the slaughterhouses, and they've decided to shut down because it's an actual problem for their staff. And so it's in terms of Virginia, maybe it's not a direct impact here yet, but maybe just because national cattle prices are down, because some of the slaughterhouses, particularly in the Midwest, haven't been able to stay open or have reduced capacity. Maybe some of the cattle markets are closing just kind of as a knock-on or spillover effect of what's happening among the big aggregators. So that's the best I can answer it. I did share with some of you a day or so ago a blog by a pretty prominent agricultural economist, Jason Lusk, and he has posted several blog posts just in the last week or two about this issue. So I recommend people check that out this week. And he's very insightful, and you can learn a lot from reading his blog in general.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, there's no beef on the shelves in the supermarkets. What's there has got a high price. People are wanting it. Corn is cheap. Farmers are wanting to sell their cattle and they can't, and the things are shutting down. So, thank you.
You're welcome. It's very frustrating.
All right, any other questions this morning? All right, well, unless anyone else has any further questions, I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank John and Ken again for your time this morning. We appreciate y'all taking a few minutes to share those updates. I know the folks that were joining us, that's some information that's very pertinent and timely, and hopefully will be a great benefit to everyone. So thank y'all again for joining us this morning. We really appreciate that. I also would like to thank, all the participants that called in and joined us this morning. We appreciate y'all coming in and being part of this effort and being able to get this information. So thank y'all for that. We will continue to host these every Thursday morning at 9 a.m. For those of you, that have joined us, you have the links and phone numbers to be able to call in. If you know friends or family, coworkers, anybody, other producers that may benefit from these calls, please share that information. This is open for anyone. So anybody that can benefit, we greatly encourage them to join us. So this will be recorded, and we will be posting the recording link and sending that out as well. So just be checking your same email that you got the invitation for these. We'll be sending out these recordings every week as well. So just like to thank everybody again, and hope everyone stays safe and healthy through this thing. And if you have any questions, please contact your local extension agent in whatever county you may be joining us from. They'll be glad to help. So thank everybody, and